Geography ruins everything. Distance between groups of people leads to isolation, which over time creates noteworthy differences in appearances and customs. Anthropology wouldn't exist without this fact, but then again, neither would genocide. When two groups conflict over ideas about how the world should work, there are typically consequences. For examples of this, see every movie about history ever made. Hollywood has love stories about war since its earliest days, usually with a focus on the good guys, read Americans, conquering the forces of evil, anti-democracy. This puts a perspective on the side of the victors, defeating the national enemy with a triumphant cry. However, what happens when the lens is put on the other side of the fight? Well, Kevin Costner provided an answer to this in his award-winning 1990 film, Dances with Wolves. As the award-winning thing indicates, this chronicle of the struggles Native Americans faced along the frontier did very well at the box office. So well, in fact, that other movies tried to use this formula. One that successfully accomplished this is The Last Samurai, a tale about how Western traditions stepped all over feudal Japan's open-toed sandals. Two great films about this concept should be enough, but then James Cameron threw his hat into the ring with Avatar, and surprise, surprise, it was a blockbuster. Almost like he knew the story was a sure thing. 3 movies, literally worlds apart, both in time, setting, cast, directing, and budget. And yet, there's threads that hold all of them tightly together. What threads, you ask? We'll try to sort out this tangled cat's cradle. First, let's look at the settings, since they're the biggest differences between the films. Dances with Wolves takes place in the American West, during a brief hiatus of conflicts with the Native Americans, commonly referred to as the Civil War. It's around the peak of the frontier times, where established trails and towns began to spring up across the plains, but some forts still had a tough time struggling against the isolation of remote areas. This created a breeding ground for communication gaps and ambushes. The Last Samurai takes place in Japan, some 10 years after the Civil War period ends. Unlike Wolves, it has an urban contrast to its setting. And the contrast is set a bit high. The Last Samurai shows another kind of frontier, where the Western culture clashes abruptly with the traditional Japanese lifestyle, and those in power are choosing to step into the modern world by adopting these new customs as their own. Those that hold onto the old ways are not forced out, but instead regarded as a threat to growth and societal evolution. The clashing of competing cultures creates constant tension. Finally, we have the planet of Pandora, which exists in the distant Aphrodite system. It must be there because it's gorgeous. Look! Just look at this! It's like nature porn out there! The native inhabitants of this fantastic planet are the Na'vi. They're pretty too. While Avatar may be the most recent and visually engaging film, its message suffers because it's completely disconnected from our reality. It's just harder to care about the Na'vi than it is the Native Americans or the Samurai because you only get 3 hours to know the big blue cat people. Native American displacement in the Samurai culture, they've earned a place in our collective consciousness. Yes?
I believe you're in my territory now.
I could be, not gonna lie, but it all depends on who are you?
I'm the Other Anthro, and you've casually stepped into my field for the last...
Wait, what, Other Anthro?
You'd better believe it. Anthropology at its purest.
I assumed anthropology, actually, but what's the first Anthro supposed to be?
What?
If you're the Other Anthro, what do people initially assume you are? Yeah, try back again when you have a real title.
But I have things to add.
Not without a real character, you don't. Also, that hat's ridiculous. Don't quit your day job. Are you tired of being rejected for internet cameos? Well, worry no more. These various backgrounds are all expansive in their own way. One with sweeping shots of the Dakota Plains, another with a rich scope of feudal Japan's landscape, and the last will leave your brain melting from its simulated beauty. So what about the groups that live in these places? We'll introduce them after we talk about the person giving us a perspective we'll see them through. It's time to talk about the main character. Yes, character. Not plural, because all 3 protagonists are the same guy. To illustrate this in greater detail, let's confer with the judge, jury, and executioner of characters.
Your sword is plunged deep into his chest, and you watch the laugh slowly drain from this man's eyes. You pull it out and raise your sword in victory and holler out to the gods. But the victory is short-lived. As you look around you, you see the devastation that has been wrought to your once noble kingdom that you rule. Your friends and your family lie dead on the wayside before you. And in that moment, it occurs to you that when you swore you were willing to sacrifice anything to see this man dead, you realize that's exactly what it would cost you. And that is always the cost of revenge. You fall to the ground and cry deep sobs as you realize you are nothing but the former shell of the once noble paladin you used to be.
So, what's going on?
Shh, we're having a moment here.
Well, can I interrupt your moment to talk to the DM?
Sure, what you need?
I meant the DM, you know, with the cloak.
Well, I was telling the story and I in the spot, so I was the DM, right?
Right. We're talking about Avatar, The Last Samurai, and Dances with Wolves.
Ooh, like all at the same time, yo?
I know, it's a bit much, I've been told, but
I've been waiting for this day for years. Let's get started. Sam Krusner is given orders to manipulate a group of indigenous people into leaving their land. As the standard soldier, he sticks to his orders, even when his ideas about these people start to change. Especially when one of them starts giving him the googly eyes. And that's when things get hairy. Because Sam Krusner is just a small cog in a giant, overwhelming machine. And when that machine decides it's time to bring the hammer down, he finds it's far too little too late to save someone or something.
I'm guessing you had that prepared for a while.
These movies all reflect one important principle. You learn to love who you live with. These soldiers came in with the preconceived notion of who these groups were, but after spending some time getting to know them, they realized that they ain't savages. They's just people. These people got a pretty good lifestyle, yo. It provides answers that his own people left out, because, like many soldiers, the government's preached one thing and one thing only.
You can't teach a hammer to lift nails, son. That dog don't hunt!
So they all turned against their own people because of the principles they learned from the group that they're displacing.
Well, yeah. Why do you think I like to spend so much time with you guys?
Huh?
I got my time machine, I almost got my cure for the Ebonics plague, but do you see me going back to save my people just yet? I want to hang out here for a few more years.
Why?
Because I love you guys.
Again, why?
You got the internet, you got the role-playing, you got the jetpacks, those are really fun, and best of all, you can beat the jetpacks, you got the back attack, the brack attack.
Ain't the bad word to pass, you.
Well, see, actually, you is in the past, it's not that far.
What, do what? I'm in the present and the past at the same time? That's just blowing my mind.
It shouldn't, because, like, in the past, like, you know, never mind, Bacchus. When Krusner realizes he feels more connection with the people he's supposed to oust, he considers them his own, and tells the authority to sit and spin. It's a ballsy move that always has a backlash.
But the backlash is always worth it because he feels more kinship with the group that he's sided with. Very nice, Kelvin.
That's Professor Kelvin, MD, and DM.
Right. I'll leave you to your epic conclusion.
Thanks, yo. Anyway, no matter what choice you make, it all comes back to that choice you made back in the beginning. Your vengeance is now complete, but at the cost of the destruction of your very soul, and soon to be your mind.
I was crying over here. The main characters each go through dramatic personal changes and values throughout the films, but the changes mean nothing if we don't look into why they happened, and in each case, it's for different reasons with similar themes. Dances was removed from his own people, initially by choice and then by circumstance. He was physically and socially isolated from his own culture. When another group found out who he was, beyond a potential threat, he became much more than a pawn to be positioned and played against the enemies. He gained the respect of the tribe and showed that he was worthy of it multiple times. As a result, they considered him one of their own, trusting him and granting him privileges within their society. He became important to them, important enough to kill for. Nathan Algren's transformation from military consultant to samurai was a little rocky and with a not-so-happy ending. That should really be the title of my show at this point. He's a warrior in spirit, which works well when there's a war on, but unfortunately, he was posted on the frontier after his time fighting his southern brethren. He came out a couple years after Dances did, and was ordered to valiantly ambush a camp of Native Americans, attacking and killing any that he saw, regardless of age or gender. He suddenly felt like this wasn't what he signed up for and drank his way out of the military. Later, after his consultation turns into active duty, he finds himself prisoner of a very alien people. traditional samurai warriors. They practice discipline, honor, and duty above all other things, which falls right in line with Nathan's value set. They too are prey to orders, but unlike soldiers who just take them without question, the samurai will offer their insights and opinions to the masters, influencing them even as they're dying, doing the orders given. Now that's a real consulting position. In Avatar, the Navi body gives him legs. Oh, and I guess our society gives him that whole not a pawn feeling, but it's basically a copy-paste of the Costner plot. The only difference is there's actually more of a focus on respecting nature than Dances with Wolves had. On the other hand, look at this nature! So beautiful! These individuals chose to side with the new group rather than their people of origin, and in most circumstances I wouldn't see this causing too many waves. However, they all did this while warfare waged, and that's going to create some inevitable conflicts. Hint, this is the uncomfortable part. In all of these scenarios, outside influences are pressuring people already on the land, either to physically remove them or change their ideas about how society should work. These are both forms of colonialism, a tried and true part of aggressive tendencies to this very day. Since most people are familiar with the concept of traditional colonialism, where the clever use of flags and guns is used to increase territory size, let's focus on the other one, cultural colonialism, using our favorite friend, the metaphor. Western influence in The Last Samurai is similar to the McDonaldization of the world today. Did you know that in a majority of the countries around the world you can find a McDonald's? That's not by accident. The business convinced each country that it would benefit from introducing this franchise into its borders and try to adapt its menu to cater to local tastes. However, despite the subtle changes made, the result is the same. Golden arches bursting through the streets in places they have no real reason to exist. Not all forms of takeover have to be hostile. American influences created it, then began marketing the idea hard enough to every country they could until people were convinced they were forced to swallow this cheap, greasy food everywhere. The Last Samurai uses this same concept, although the boycott has a much darker ending. They were losing more than their waist size, though. The modern world asked Japan to give up their ways of honor in order to embrace the open market ideal that started to take hold in the latter 19th century. Since the American diplomat represented his own people in their successful ways, the assumption was that this worldview was the best one to have, and everyone should adopt it.
And we'll throw in an additional lobster at no extra charge! Hold on 1 second!
It's ethnocentrism.
I thought I kicked you off my show.
You did, but you're beating around the bush. All three movies showcase worst-case scenarios of ethnocentrism.
Huh. Do you have time to elaborate on that?
So I get a chance to talk now.
As long as you stay out of the other voice, we're good.
Ethnocentrism is the idea that the culture one grew up with has the right set of values, and all other cultures are therefore judged against the real culture this person comes from. In all three of these films, European lifestyles are seen as the ideal, and those that don't live that way are uncivilized savages that don't realize how miserable their lives are without its influence. Ethnocentrism is like a naive child playing with new neighbor kids. When they start playing a game he's unfamiliar with, he immediately tells them they're doing it wrong and shows them the right way to play. No one likes this kid, and for good reason. Not everyone likes to play the same games.
So even in Dances with Wolves and Avatar, idea domination is the core thing being argued over. The land and its resources are just coincidental prizes that happen to fall to one side when they realize the other plays the game of Risk differently.
Exactly. Europeans were cheating bastards.
Thanks for the insight, announcer.
Don't mention it.
All this for 7 easy payments of $87.93!
So when one side fights against the other, the technology almost always decides which one will come out the victor. The native people or ideas fall to the wayside as gunfire and military tactics weaken their numbers until near or complete eradication. Well, except in Avatar, where the planet fights with the indigenous people to fend off the invaders. That's why it's a fantasy. We live in a world dominated by the market idea. That's part of the reason why banners appear over the bottom of my videos, or even at the side, sometimes right over the face. Sure, we've trained ourselves to just click that little X and get rid of it, but that doesn't change the fact that the banners are not going away. Advertising is the price we pay for the culture that we embraced. Our protagonists in these films saw the direction the world was heading and decided that they did not want to participate in it, even if it meant joining the side that was almost assuredly going to lose in the upcoming conflict. Because winning and losing did not matter in the end. It was having a sense of a real place in the world, which the cog-in-the-machine commodities market does not provide. If one man falls, another replaces him. wholly different, yet ultimately the same. They did not want to be a replaced cog, they wanted to be a human being. And that's why these movies are so lauded. They're all amazing. Great casts, great visuals, touching stories, intense social messages, and memorable battle scenes. It's everything you want in a movie, and it happens 3 times. That's just awesome. Each one is totally worth a watch, just don't watch them all in 1 week. Over 8 hours of unsettling conflict is very draining. I'm the Other Socio, and I need to watch a comedy.
White man came across the sea. He brought us pain and misery. He killed our tribes. He killed our creed. He took our game for his own need. We fought him hard. We fought him well. Out on the plains, we gave him hell.
Is this thing on? Oh my god, this isn't even a microphone. Do you see this? It is just a facsimile thereof. It's these little slips that made him decide this is a microphone. Introducing the new prop microphone. It is beautiful and it's convincing from Really Brand.